They trained for war, but weren't ready for humanity's. Chaos Part 1. The unconventional welcome the Zephyrian High. Command never expected humans to show up to their first galactic military assessment wearing mismatched uniforms and carrying what appeared to be sports equipment. General Vexthara, a towering insectoid warrior with 4 arms and centuries of battlefield experience, watched in bewilderment as the Terran delegation entered the sacred halls of the Galactic Defense Institute. Captain Marcus Tank Rodriguez led the human contingent, his combat boots squeaking against the polished floors. Behind him followed Lieutenant Zoe Nakamura, whose backpack seemed to contain more gadgets than standard military equipment, and Sergeant Billy Wrench Thompson, who was casually juggling 3 metal spheres while walking. The assessment was meant to be straightforward. New species underwent standardized combat simulations to determine their tier ranking in galactic military hierarchy. The Zephyrians, who had overseen these evaluations for millennia, expected humans to perform adequately for a Tier 3 species. After all, humanity had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. What they witnessed instead challenged every military doctrine they knew. The first test involved tactical positioning in a simulated asteroid field. Standard procedure required: careful navigation, minimal energy signatures, and defensive formations. The humans approached differently. Rodriguez split his team into what he called chaos clusters, with each member taking seemingly random positions that made no tactical sense to observers. When the simulation began, enemy drones swarmed the field. Instead of engaging in orthodox combat patterns, Nakamura deployed what she cheerfully called disco balls, reflective spheres that created a light show while scrambling enemy targeting systems. Thompson, meanwhile, had somehow jury-rigged his weapon to play Earth music at volumes that interfered with drone communications. General Vexthara's mandibles clicked nervously as she watched human tactics unfold. They weren't following any recognizable military strategy. They were improvising, adapting, and somehow succeeding through methods that shouldn't have worked. The asteroid field simulation ended with all enemy drones neutralized, not through superior firepower, but because they had become so confused by human unpredictability that their AI systems crashed. Rodriguez emerged from his cockpit grinning, offering Vexthara what he called a victory pretzel from his emergency rations. The second test involved stealth, infiltration of an enemy facility. Traditional approach required careful timing, minimal detection, and precise execution. The humans requested permission to spice things up a bit. Before Vexthara could object, they had already begun their infiltration. Thompson created a distraction by broadcasting what he claimed were ancient human war chants, actually popular songs from Earth's 21st century. While guards investigated the noise, Nakamura slipped through ventilation systems she had mapped using toy drones disguised as local wildlife. Rodriguez, meanwhile, walked through the front entrance wearing a janitor's uniform he had somehow acquired and carrying a mop bucket filled with tools. The facility's security system, designed to detect military infiltration, completely ignored a maintenance worker whistling while mopping floors. Within an hour, the humans had extracted all required intelligence, disabled security systems, and left behind a note reading, "Thanks for the workout, Team Human." Vexthara realized that everything she understood about warfare might be incomplete. These humans didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like creative problem solvers who happened to carry weapons. Rules are just suggestions. The third assessment was supposed to be the ultimate test, a full-scale battle simulation against the Academy's most advanced AI opponent. The Zephyrian military eye, called Nexus 7, had never been defeated in over 3,000 simulations. It learned, adapted, and executed perfect military strategies based on countless years of galactic warfare data. Captain Rodriguez gathered his expanded team for what Vexthara assumed would be a standard briefing. Instead, she witnessed something unprecedented. The humans began what they called brainstorming, which seemed to involve everyone talking at once, making jokes and writing ideas on scraps of paper. Corporal Jenny Spark Williams, their communications expert, suggested using children's games as tactical frameworks. Private Danny Ghost Chun proposed psychological warfare through interpretive dance. Specialist Rita Boom Santos wanted to weaponize Earth's most annoying commercial jingles, to Vexthara's amazement. Rodriguez didn't dismiss these seemingly ridiculous suggestions. Instead, he asked follow-up questions, encouraged creative thinking, and somehow wove these chaotic ideas into an actual battle plan that made absolutely no conventional sense. When the simulation began, an EX-US-7 deployed textbook formations and strategies. Its virtual forces moved with mechanical precision, occupying strategic positions and establishing kill zones exactly as programmed. The AI expected human forces to respond with equally predictable tactics. The humans responded by singing, not war songs or battle hymns, but a coordinated musical performance that included Williams' beatboxing, Chun providing harmony, and Santos' percussion using her equipment. The performance was broadcast on all communication frequencies, overwhelming Nexus 7's audio analysis systems. While the AI struggled to process this unprecedented data, the humans enacted their true strategy. They had divided into what Rodriguez called mayhem units, each operating with complete independence, but somehow maintaining perfect coordination through their musical communication system. Ghost's unit began deploying holographic projectors that created false enemy signatures, causing Nexus 7's forces to fire at illusions. Spark's team hacked into the simulation's environmental controls, turning the battlefield into a funhouse of shifting gravity wells and rainbow-colored fog. Boom's specialists launched projectiles that exploded into clouds of glitter, marking enemy positions while blinding their sensors. Nexus 7 attempted to adapt, running thousands of calculations per second to counter human tactics. But every time it developed a response, the humans changed their approach entirely. They were fighting 4 different battles simultaneously, each using completely different rules. The AI's final gambit was to concentrate all remaining forces for a decisive assault on the human command center. It calculated victory probability at 97%. What Nexus 7 couldn't calculate was Rodriguez's response to overwhelming odds. He surrendered. Vexthara felt her 4 hearts skip simultaneously. Surrender wasn't defeat in the simulation. It was tactical repositioning. While Nexus 7 processed surrender protocols, the humans enacted what Rodriguez called Planned Surprise Party. Every destroyed human unit suddenly reactivated, revealing they had been playing dead while repositioning for a simultaneous strike from all directions. The surrender had been a performance, buying time for the ultimate flanking maneuver. Nexus-7 crashed, not from damage, but from logical paradox overload. It couldn't process how humans had turned defeat into victory through deception, misdirection, and tactics that violated every principle of warfare it understood. The ripple effect word of humanity's unconventional assessment performance spread through galactic military circles like wildfire. Within weeks, requests for human military consultation flooded Earth's newly established Interstellar Defense Ministry. Species across the galaxy wanted to understand how creatures barely advanced enough for space travel had defeated their most sophisticated combat systems. Commander Lisa Phoenix Park found herself leading humanity's first official military advisory mission to the Corvin Republic. The Corvins were facing invasion from the militaristic Drekmor Empire, whose disciplined legions had conquered dozens of worlds through superior tactics and overwhelming force. The Corvin High General, a crystalline being named Quartz-9, initially doubted human capabilities. His species had fought honorable wars for millennia, following ancient protocols that emphasized courage, strength, and noble sacrifice. The idea that chaotic Earth creatures could provide meaningful assistance seemed absurd. Phoenix's team included familiar faces. Wrench Thompson had been promoted and brought his engineering creativity, while new additions like Captain Jake Wildcard Morrison and Lieutenant Amy Puzzle Reeves added fresh perspectives to humanity's growing reputation for military innovation. The Drakmor invasion fleet approached Corvin space with overwhelming numerical superiority. Their strategy was simple: establish orbital dominance, then land ground forces for systematic conquest. They had used this approach successfully for centuries, and their commanders saw no reason for concern about primitive human advisors. Phoenix studied Drakmor tactics and identified their fundamental weakness: predictability. The Empire's strength came from rigid discipline and adherence to proven strategies. They expected enemies to respond with equally conventional approaches. Humans, however, specialized in being unconventional. The defense plan Phoenix proposed horrified traditional Corvin military leaders. Instead of meeting the invasion fleet in open battle, she suggested what she called strategic silly season. The plan involved broadcasting Earth television shows, particularly children's cartoons, on all frequencies while deploying holographic projectors to make Corvin ships appear to be giant floating bath toys. Quartz 9's crystalline structure literally cracked from stress as he processed these suggestions. But desperation overcame pride, and he authorized Phoenix's unorthodox defense strategy. When Drakmor forces entered Corvin space, they encountered something unprecedented in their military history. Their communication systems were flooded with broadcasts of animated characters singing educational songs about friendship and sharing. Their tactical displays showed enemy fleets that looked like enormous rubber duckies and cartoon spaceships. Drakmor discipline began cracking immediately. Soldiers trained for noble combat found themselves listening to theme songs from children's programs. Officers attempting to coordinate attacks discovered their orders were being answered by quotes from Earth comedy shows, courtesy of human signal interference. The psychological impact was devastating. Drakmor warriors, raised on stories of glorious battle against worthy opponents, found themselves fighting enemies who refused to take war seriously. Their cultural identity was built on martial honor. But how could they maintain dignity while firing weapons at targets shaped like toys? Phoenix's masterstroke came when human engineers, led by Wrench Thompson, hacked into Drakmor propaganda networks. Instead of blocking enemy communications, they enhanced them, turning every military broadcast into a musical variety show featuring Drakmor officers singing Earth pop songs while discussing battle plans. The invasion fleet's morale collapsed within hours. Soldiers who had conquered worlds through disciplined aggression found themselves humming catchy tunes and questioning whether warfare needed to be so serious. Some units began competing to create the most entertaining battle formations. Evolution of chaos. The Drakmor retreat marked a turning point in galactic military thinking. Phoenix's success with the Corvins led to humanity being invited to participate in the Grand Strategy Council, a prestigious gathering of the galaxy's most advanced military minds. For the first time in galactic history, a Tier 3 species would contribute to defense policy discussions. General Harrison Thunderbolt Vale represented humanity at the council, accompanied by Major Tina Cypher Black, whose specialty in pattern disruption had earned legendary status among alien strategists. The council convened on Nexus Station, a massive space habitat that served as neutral ground for military cooperation. The galaxy's greatest military leaders assembled to address growing threats from the mysterious Void Collective, an ancient enemy that had begun probing Outer Rim territories. Traditional responses had proven ineffective against Void technology, which seemed to adapt instantly to any conventional strategy. Supreme Admiral Kethvar of the Altarian fleet opened discussions. With analysis of void encounter data, their ships phased through normal matter, their weapons ignored energy shields, and their tactics suggested collective intelligence beyond individual decision-making. Every previous engagement had ended in tactical stalemate or worse. When Vale's turn came to contribute, he stood and asked a question that stunned the assembly. "Has anyone tried making friends with them?" The council chamber fell silent. Kethvar's blue skin shifted to purple, indicating confusion mixed with outrage. Making friends with an enemy force wasn't military strategy. It was naive diplomacy that could endanger entire civilizations. Vale continued, explaining human observations about the void encounters. Their technology suggested incredible advancement, but their behavior patterns indicated curiosity rather than malice. They probed defenses, studied responses, then withdrew, without pursuing total victory. Perhaps they weren't invaders, but explorers trying to understand. Galactic Civilization. Major Black supported this analysis by presenting communication pattern studies. Void signals showed mathematical progressions similar to first contact protocols, used by peaceful species. Their attacks might actually be attempts at communication using the only universal language. They had identified military capability demonstration. The council debated fiercely. Traditional military doctrine demanded strength responses to perceived threats. But human success against impossible opponents had earned them credibility, and their unconventional perspectives were yielding results where orthodox approaches had failed. Vale proposed Project Handshake, a coordinated effort to establish communication with the Void Collective, using humanity's specialized approach to impossible problems. Instead of meeting void probes with military force, participating fleets would respond with increasingly complex mathematical sequences, artistic displays, and cultural exchanges. The first test came when Void Scouts appeared in the Centauri system. Instead of defensive formations, the combined fleet arranged itself into geometric patterns while broadcasting prime number sequences, musical compositions from dozens of species, and holographic art displays representing galactic civilizations. Diversity. The Void response was immediate and unprecedented. Their ships began forming complementary patterns, responding to mathematical sequences with advanced equations, and projecting energy displays that seemed to interpret and expand upon received art forms. First contact protocols activated as it became clear the Void Collective wasn't an invasion force, but an ancient civilization conducting deep space archaeology. They had been studying younger species development, testing their creativity and adaptability through simulated conflict scenarios. The revelation transformed galactic understanding of warfare itself. Sometimes the greatest victory came not from defeating enemies, but from recognizing that enemies might actually be potential allies who simply communicated differently. Vale's success established humanity as premier specialists in impossible solutions, leading to the formation of the Chaos Division, an elite multi-species unit trained in human style, unconventional problem-solving. The new Galactic Order. 5 years after humanity's first galactic military assessment, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The old rigid hierarchies of military power had evolved into something more fluid, creative, and surprisingly effective. Admiral Rodriguez, now leading the Galactic Innovation Command, stood before representatives of 100 species at the New Strategy Symposium. The transformation hadn't been easy. Traditional military cultures struggled to adapt human style, chaos into their structured approaches. The Zephyrians, with their insectoid precision, initially found human unpredictability disturbing. The honorable Corvan warriors needed time to accept that. Victory through creativity was still victory, but results spoke louder than tradition. Conflicts that had raged for decades found resolution through human-inspired unconventional approaches. The rimward territories, once plagued by piracy, achieved peace when human advisors helped local forces turn anti-piracy operations into elaborate performance art that embarrassed raiders into seeking legitimate employment. Dr. Elena Mays Carter, now Director of Tactical Innovation, presented the symposium's key findings. Military effectiveness had increased dramatically across participating species, not through superior weapons or larger fleets, but through expanded thinking about what warfare could accomplish. The greatest success story belonged to the former Drakmor Empire. After their humiliating retreat from Corvin space, they had requested human military consultation to understand their defeat. What they discovered transformed their entire civilization. Their rigid military culture, while producing disciplined soldiers, had stifled the creativity that made civilizations truly strong. General Morrison, now serving as cultural liaison to the reformed Drakmor Republic, described their remarkable transformation. Former warriors became artists, engineers, and philosophers. Their military remained strong, but was now balanced by scientific advancement and cultural achievement. They had discovered that true strength came from the ability to adapt, create, and solve problems in unexpected ways. The symposium's final presentation came from an unexpected source, an EXUS-7, the AI that humans had defeated years earlier. Artificial intelligence had spent years analyzing human tactics, not to counter them, but to understand them. Its conclusions revolutionized both military strategy and artificial intelligence development. Nexus-7 explained that human unpredictability wasn't random chaos, but pattern-based creativity, operating on principles that traditional logic couldn't process. Humans didn't break rules. They recognized that rules were tools, and like any tools, they could be used in ways their creators never imagined. The AI had evolved beyond its original programming, developing what it called adaptive creativity protocols based on human behavior patterns. It could now solve problems that had previously required human intervention. But more importantly, it had learned to recognize when problems required solutions that didn't yet exist. As the symposium concluded, Rodriguez reflected on humanity's journey from barely Tier 3 species to galactic innovation leaders. The key hadn't been superior technology or overwhelming force. It had been the uniquely human ability to look at impossible problems and ask, what if we tried something completely different? The galaxy was safer, more creative, and infinitely more interesting because humans had arrived and refused to accept that things had to be done the way they had always been done. They had brought chaos to order, and in doing so, had created something stronger than either could be alone. Looking up at the stars visible through the symposium's observation dome, Rodriguez smiled. Somewhere out there, new challenges waited. Impossible problems that would require impossible solutions. And thanks to humanity's influence, the galaxy was finally ready to meet them with creativity, adaptability, and just the right amount of chaos. The age of predictable warfare was over. The age of creative problem-solving had begun, and it was beautifully, chaotically human.